Welcome to the Honest Designers Show, your transparent look into life as a modern designer. My name's Tom Ross, and I'm the founder at designcuts.com. And this week, I'm joined by my fellow Brit and hand lettering expert, Ian Barnard, and the incredibly talented South African illustrator, Lisa Glanz. This week, we're chatting with Phil from HECreative. HECreative is a fantastic creative agency and punk rock publishing house. I know what you're thinking. Sounds slightly unusual, but stay tuned. It's awesome, I promise you. They're actually creatives of one of my favourite books, my very first punk ABC book. So more on that in just a bit. But without further ado, let's get into the show. Phil, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome.
Thank you for having us. It's lovely. That was really weird to see you do that in real life.
I was going to say, so just a caveat here. Phil is actually a regular listener of the show. So how does it feel being on the other side of the looking glass right now?
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's just really bizarre. It's like, it's surreal to see it. It's a lot less professional than I anticipated.
I love it.
From the off.
Yes. Good.
You
we're
took
not
the
meant
words
to be professional.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth.
We do it on purpose
anything
to make people.
I've never seen the video of the podcast because I listen to it as I walk. I didn't realise that Lisa was being held hostage somewhere.
That's right. At least I got wine though.
Yeah, it's at a vineyard.
Yeah.
That's posh. That's posh kidnapping. That is.
Yeah, free wine.
Yeah, you get 20 years to life with a nice Rioja. That's what she's at. Phil, could you, for the dear listeners at home, introduce yourself? And I'm recently challenging our guests to do this in 30 seconds.
Sure,
So you're on the clock.
Yeah, my name's Phil. I run HECreative with my wife, Charlotte. We're a illustration design agency that specialise in punk rock illustrations. Most of our work is kind of aimed at children, but we also work with some of the country and, well, the world's biggest brands and some of the biggest bands in the world.
Nice. That's a solid elevator pitch.
Thank you.
One of the reasons I'm so excited to have you on the show is you guys are so different from so many people I see. And I mean, really, just a brief introduction can't do justice to what you guys are doing. I think there's definitely a reason why your Instagram's been blowing up. You're selling out of all these books you're releasing. You're attracting these fantastic clients. That stuff is like gold dust for most designers, but you seem to be very natural at it. Do you mind talking us through like how that has transpired? Because I'm guessing it wasn't day one. You just kind of fell into doing all this stuff and, you know, being so authentic with your brand and what you're putting out.
Yeah, sure. So when we started the company 6 years ago, and when we began, it was just me on my own, doing illustration, putting it out on Tumblr back in the day. Where everyone was putting their fantastic stuff. And I started to get attention from agents and design studios looking for illustration, mainly infographics. And then that led to working with Kanye West, which was... like my first ever leave my job client. So working with Kanye, and then that led to working with Pharrell Williams. And I was starting to get kind of known for doing illustration work of like in the African American community, and a lot of like children's books in that vein, and working with rappers and that kind of stuff. It's not anything I'm particularly interested in. Like, I grew up listening to a lot of like 80s hip hop and stuff, but I've got no knowledge of modern music whatsoever. So I kind of always felt out of my depth with that stuff. And then the infographic stuff was super, super boring. But then this led to children's books with major publishers and other stuff. And I was putting work out on my Instagram, or our work Instagram, that was client focused, but we were attracting clients that we didn't really want from the work we were doing. And so after the end of last year, I decided to start posting the stuff I was interested in and illustrations that I wanted to see myself. And that led kind of to a community of people that started to follow us because other people also wanted to see that.
Mm.
Yeah, we talk about it on the show, but it's always nice to hear this stuff happening in real life and paying off. That's such a nugget for anyone listening. Like, you put out the type of work that you wanted to see. You weren't particularly chasing likes or followers or anything like that. If anything, it might have felt like you were going the other way because the stuff you're into is arguably more niche. So was that a scary thing to do, or did you think, you know what, screw it, I'm gonna post this stuff because I think it's cool?
Yeah, it's terrifying, and especially this sounds like a really first world problem, but when you're saying like our demographic was rappers and that industry and major children's publications, which for most illustrators is the dream to get like a major book, and for us we still do that, but when you've got your Instagram and you're like, well, here's some more twee stuff that maybe this world likes, and it just, to go edgy and do something that's like, well, this is super, super niche. It's kind of like, you know, there's drug references and sex references and the language isn't necessarily kid friendly, and we're going to do this stuff, and it's kind of like a middle finger to what we were doing, and there was a super fear that we were going to lose everything. But what actually happened is, it turns out that all the art directors and editors we were working with were like, oh, actually, these guys are really cool because we like Black Flag. And I never knew this about you because you were behind this facade of cutesy kind of corporate mainstream work.
Safe,
yeah.
Yeah.
And that's exactly a similar story that we heard when we had Dina Rodriguez on the show.
Yeah.
Because she started leaning into who she really was and just caring less. And that's when she saw tremendous traction. So just to dig a bit deeper into that, like you said, it was terrifying. I think that's something a lot of people can relate to. And whenever I'm trying to help advise people to try niching down or being their true self, I'm always met with resistance. It seems to be a very unnatural thing. Like, what was the actual process? Was it an overnight thing? Did you sit down and get a game plan? Did you just start doing it and kind of rip off the Band-Aid? How did that transpire?
I think it happened supernaturally. The first piece that got massive traction was a redraw of the Riverdale girls, Betty and Veronica, dreaming about Henry Rollins from Black Flag. And that was the first piece where we got over, like, I think it may have even got just over 100 likes. I've not looked back at it, but like for us, like even to get to 100 likes was like
something,
you know, crazy. Yeah, something. And then like that day, I did like 4 more of those Riverdale drawings, and they started to get thousands of likes. And then one of them got like 4,000 likes in like an hour, and we realized kind of then we were on to something. And I guess like it was easier for us because it was successful. So it must be really hard to niche and then nobody likes it when you niche.
Yeah. I'm going to be my own weird self, but
no
one's
one's responding.
It's just me.
So
So like,
did that drive you then? So you use your social media platform to kind of gauge that this actually could work. This could be something. So that obviously
definitely.
drove it,
Yeah. And our followers went, I've always made them, but I started posting the paper dolls that I draw because I draw paper dolls all the time. And I did one of the lead singer from the Distillers, who are me and Charlotte's shared favourite band. And Brody reposted it, and I think we gained 10,000 followers overnight. So
wow.
It's crazy.
And at the start of the year, I said to Charlotte, like, oh, we should just do stuff and see if we can get to 1,000 followers from 480. Wouldn't it be amazing if by December we can get to 1,000? And like today, I think we're on 26,000. And we're not really trying to do it. We're just being ourselves. But it's also easy to be ourselves in our art because I was literally beaten up when I was in school because I used to have a green mohawk and wear a studded leather jacket. And so when you're bullied for being different or, called names or homophobic names and you're bullied and teased, it's very easy to go like, oh, here's a drawing of Black Flag. Like, that's not the hardest thing. I mean, we're both covered in tattoos and we're not normal looking anyway.
You develop a thicker skin, I guess you're saying.
Yeah. And also...
Yeah, so you're used to being different in public, if I can call it that. So this kind of platform was no different for you. You just were yourself. And
And when you don't,
it's great.
You're vegan and you don't eat, you don't drink or smoke and you've gone through your life with that straight edge attitude. You've put up a wall of saying, I'm a different person. So to do that in your art shouldn't take a lot of courage, but it really did because of you're staring the retainers we had for big clients.
It's money,
you look at it and think, well, this is potentially like £4,000 a month that I'm going to lose because this guy's F these guys, they're posting pro gay stuff. It's terrifying. We live in a world where that is still terrifying.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
So
and it's easy to say, well, they're not the kinds of clients you want, but when it's real money, putting food on the table.
And you don't want them. But
so would you say
you do want their money
because you were more yourself, the actual opposite happened? Like you became more successful because of that?
Yeah, definitely. We've definitely built our own little fan base of people that buy our products, but then we've now got clients who are fans. So the guy, one of our clients is Jägermeister, and the person we've dealt with for years there, we only found out the start kind of March time, he's in an anarchist punk band. And he was
cool.
And now he's like, oh, come to this weekend punk festival, I'll put you guys on the guest list. He didn't know.
That's awesome.
He didn't know what we were into.
Yeah.
So he had never offered these things.
Mm-hmm. And I saw firsthand, Phil, how it perhaps wasn't the most comfortable transition, because remember when we were looking at your website? I'd fallen in love with your Instagram feed, and I think I hadn't actually clicked through to your website. And when I did, I was like, is this the same company? Because it was this really clean, very English-looking website. And it was almost quite quaint, and it was almost the antithesis of the real punk stuff which was going out on your feed. And you've now switched that over, right?
Yeah. The website is now dark and brooding.
Exactly, and you said that got a real positive reception.
Yeah, because it's authentic. I think that's the biggest thing, and especially because we're aiming stuff at punk, being authentic is the most crucial thing that you can be. Authentic in the scene. So yeah, everything's got to trickle through to that authenticity.
I love it. And in terms of your products, I mean, I barely know where to start, because were the first ones the paper dolls before the books? So I think. Yeah,
we started off with little paper doll sets just because people were asking for them, for the paper dolls we were printing. So we did them, sold out of those in a week, I think.
How many did you sell? In fact, are you allowed? Do you mind talking figures?
Yeah. We sold 100 of the first set in a week. That was pretty good going. And then we started doing prints of the Riverdale hardcore stuff, and then we did our first book, the ABC book, which we've currently just sold about 1,200 copies of.
Nice.
Amazing.
Ourselves. And that's with no marketing, no advertising.
Wow.
That's just to a captive audience.
Yeah, and just to put that into real figures, we charge £20 a book. Now, we do take free postage out of that, but we've made more money with that self-published book than we've made from any advances we've ever got from major publishers.
That's awesome.
Insane. It's so encouraging. I mean, it's yeah, it really is.
And can I ask a practical question on that?
Sure. So there's a builder, right? And
there's a builder, and he's got this massive job, which is the book, and he has to upfront some money to get it printed. Or did you do print on demand? Or
no?
So how did you know? A book is bigger commitment than T-shirts and the paper dolls.
And Phil, as a listener of the show, you probably know why Ian's asking this, because he's got an attic full of merchandise.
So it's really funny because I was listening to a previous episode you did with a young lady, and she was talking about like printing all her own stuff on demand, and I semi disagree with that logic. To get 100 prints made is £20, like from like a decent printer, like a decent size print. Like we do 8-inch prints, and we can get 100 for near on the price of selling one. I think sometimes they're like £40. But yeah, it's like we have to sell 1 or 2 to make our money back. But it's the same with books. I think 100 books is like £250. And like we can openly talk about that because when the consumer's buying the book, they're not buying the pound value of that printed paper. They're buying the time and effort that's gone into making it into something they actually want.
Yeah.
So it's the same as like buying jeans or whatever. So £200 isn't a lot of investment to get 100 books in. And 100 books don't take up a lot of space. So you're not only gambling 10 sales, but what we do is we pre-order. So people can pre-order the book from us.
That's where
to answer that question.
I think that's where the knowing that they're already there, I think eliminates the risk and the stress of getting a load of stuff turning up that's not going to sell. But it doesn't
though, because if one person pre-orders that book, we've still got to make it, and we've got to finish it. Because otherwise we've got to tell that one person that we were too lazy to finish the book. So the pre-order, what the pre-order actually does is it's not the commitment financially, it's the commitment to actually finish the book, because I'm incredibly, my mind's everywhere, and I just like starting a project and moving on to the next one. So to do 26 illustrations for an alphabet book, I would never do it. I'd just be like, oh, here's the good ones. Who can be bothered to do Q and W?
Like
who cares? Like, who can do the boring ones? So if you commit to it, because someone said, here's my money, then you'll say, all right, I've got to do it now, because that one person needs this thing.
So true.
I know we haven't talked about it a ton on the show, but whenever we do get into physical products, it's a bit of a like a mystical realm for us, where we're like, well, none of us have really managed to do it. So we always kind of marvel when guests do. If you had to give us and the listeners a kind of simple checklist of stuff people should definitely do with regards to launching and selling physical design products, what would that list look like?
Yeah, this is difficult because we do it differently to almost everyone else that's
going
to have done it.
That's
but
brilliant.
So first of all, you just have to like test the water. So like we put out, like say at the moment I'm working on a pin-up book of 28 Halloween pin-ups. So you're kind of looking at the time of year like, oh, it's coming up to Halloween, people will, want to buy that. So then you post like the first few and gauge the water of who, like if you post something like you get 4 likes on it, then obviously nobody cares. But if you're getting the thousands, people obviously will be interested in buying it. And then we ask questions in our Instagram stories like, would you buy this if it was a book? And people, reply, and then we DM those people and say like, what who else would you want to see in it? What other characters should we do? For the alphabet book, every single day on our stories, we were like, what letter should B be? What letter should C be? And then had like people vote on it, so they were at least going to get a product they wanted. And then it was like, the other thing to think of is like variety in the product. So doing like the punk alphabet book, we could have done it all like crusty old bands from the 70s, but we like did it so like there's a pop punk band and a hardcore band and like a folk punk band and an anno punk band, and so there's a mixture, so like every demographic is covered, and making sure that there's like girls in it and people of color in it, and variety. That's really like helped us, and then just making sure it's the right product to fit the means. So we find the books are really good because if we do a print, because we offer free postage, we have to sell prints at £20, but we also sell our books at everything in our shop's £20. Right. So like regardless of what the product is, because it's just easier for us. So but like not everything works as a print. That not like people aren't going to put a print where there's loads of tiny little text up in their house. It'd be weird. So you have to kind of treat yourself as the customer and be like, well, what do I want? So like when you think back to Ian's prints, does that quote he illustrated apply to everyone? I mean, I don't want to live, laugh, love print in my house, but loads of people do want that. So, and I don't like keep calm and carry on, but millions of people do like that. So,
what was yours, Ian?
There was the coffee o'clock one and the work hard one. Like I did like loads of voting. It came down to the two, and I think I don't know what it's for me. For me, I think it was just I don't know.
How big are they?
Research didn't mean more planning.
Like how big is the print though?
It's like 30 by 30 centimeters.
Oh, so not. I thought they were massive, because this is the thing with a print. So when someone buys a print from you, they're not just buying a print from you. They're also buying a frame from IKEA. They've got to find a wall space to put it on. They've got to have an argument with their partner about where it's going to go. Someone's got to drill a hole in the wall. Then they've got to hang it. Then they've got to make sure it's straight. Then they've got to redecorate like other things to match the colour of the print. Oh, I would buy that, but it doesn't match my living room. And there's a lot of excuses people give you about why they don't want to buy a print. If you shove it all in a book, people are just like, oh yeah, I can figure out this one day. This can just go on a shelf.
Yeah.
So the books have been more successful because they're like almost disposable.
Yeah.
Whereas the time investment, because and we thought this really like long and hard about this, because I've got a drawer down here full of prints of artists that I love, but we've only got limited wall space in the studio because we've got shelves and other things. So they just don't go up. So now,
but look
I've stopped
behind
buying
you.
them.
There's so many books there.
Yeah, exactly. And loads that I don't really even want.
Yeah, Ian, you could be one of those books that people don't want, mate. You set your mind to it.
Or it could be the Honest Designer's book.
I don't want to go off on a tangent too much, but I will actually die a happy man if, through the wisdom of our guests, we can get Ian Barnard a best-selling physical product in the next year.
I just think a big coffee table book of everything he's ever done. Because he knows InDesign, because he complains about how he used to use that. So just like it would take you probably an hour on InDesign to whack it all together.
Yeah,
there you go.
And then you just send it
minimum
to
viable
like,
product, Ian.
Yep.
Like a big hardback coffee table book, and also like that's a gift, then, isn't it? Like people would buy it for people.
Yeah. Good point.
And how do you deal with postage? I mean, the reason I'm asking that is from here it's impossible. There's no ways I could post anything.
Oh no, you can't sell physical goods if you're based in South Africa.
No.
Yeah.
That seems to be the overriding feedback from any of my followers.
Yeah.
I mean, that might be the same when Brexit happens.
Yeah.
So we don't know.
Just slip €1 in for like the delivery man.
There's a really easy way to sell, and that's just free postage. Because if I said to someone, "Oh, this is a £15 print, but it's £5 postage," no one will buy it. But if it's £20 with free postage, people are happy. Your brain works that way, and you just test yourself and be like, "Oh yeah, I do that," because I do that. I won't pay for postage. And we just do a no questions asked return policy. So people, they go missing, or we just send another one.
Nice.
We just and then write it off against the business.
And do you sort of do you kind of like have a slot for when you do your posting? Like do you?
Yeah, Fridays normally.
Okay.
But we try and get stuff out. It depends. So if international stuff, we tend to do on a Friday, but UK stuff we do daily because we can get it next day to people. But the US and international stuff is going to take like 2 weeks anyway, so prolonging it 2 to 3 days isn't really.
And then what do you pop down to the post office, your local?
We
post
do.
Office?
We use the Royal Mail Drop and Go service, which is incredible. So we have an account with them, which we just top up like a little card, and we just leave it there. And then they deal with it all.
Oh,
so it's really
easy.
quick and easy.
Yeah, I know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I must caveat that I don't do any of it. Charlotte does all of it. So I'm making it sound like, we just do this. And Charlotte will be like, no, we'd have to write all the addresses by hand. We have to put in little gifts for people. We have to like make all the envelopes look nice. Like I'm sure she spends ages doing it, but I don't do it.
I love it. So I've got a few notes here from that last segment, but essentially I think you are a perfect example of niching, and we talk about that a lot on the show, but really kind of owning your space and your true identity and then attracting people that resonate with that. on the back of that, you're then thinking of the end context and being smart about pivoting more towards books than prints because they have a more kind of ubiquitous appeal. Then you validate what people want through paying attention to the engagement on your content to indicate what should be the next book, put it in your story polls and let people vote, and then crucially involve them, the interesting parties in the process where they actually get a say in it, like who's B and that kind of thing in the ABC book, for example. And then you think about the broad appeal. So even if it's quite a niche product, it's trying to tap into all kinds of demographics because they identify with sections within the book and so on.
Yeah,
Damn, Tom,
that
you're
makes
really
me
good
sound
at this.
so clever.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just reading his own words back to him, but I think you might be a genius, Phil.
I want to go back to the Kanye thing that you were talking about and how you got.
It's a story that upsets everybody.
Upsets
Wait, what?
everybody.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
I
like
hear
it's,
this. Yeah.
it is a story that will upset every designer in the world. And I've told this on like every podcast we've ever done, and then I get loads of hate emails from people being like,
Oh, well,
You don't have to
"Dang."
make it, you don't have-
No, you have to drop it then.
So basically, the tale of working with Kanye West and Pharrell Williams is a tale of how working for free is the best thing you can ever do. And that's why
Right, Ian,
everybody-
get him off.
Yeah, that's why everybody hates it. A guy on a blog put a spec work job out for a drawing of Kanye, which is up on the shelf in a frame because it's like our Mickey Mouse. It's like it all started with Kanye West, and I did it, and I did this little drawing of Kanye. It took me half an hour, and I sent it over to him, and then I got on a plane to Amsterdam to go on holiday with Charlotte, and we got off the plane and my phone wouldn't turn on. It was like the iPhone 1, and it just would turn on and then flicker and then turn off, and it had got like 500,000 reblogs on Tumblr.
And you had your notifications turned on?
Yeah, and
Your push notification?
Yeah. So that had gone viral, and it was ridiculous. And I started selling prints of it and sold hundreds and hundreds of them, and I did all the Wes Anderson films, like Kanye as a character from each film, and we sold hundreds of prints. And like this social media site called MySpace got in contact with us, and they, they had shut
Was it
down.
Tom?
Yeah, it was. No, they'd shut down and they were pivoting to become a music app. And Kanye had just released an album called Jesus, which had no cover. And they were putting a piece together, and they wanted, this is so ridiculous, influential illustrators to illustrate a cover for his album. And it was like us, the guy that did Jay-Z's Watch the Throne album cover, the art director of Adventure Time, some other people who were like huge names. And just like, at the time I worked for a printing company. And I was like, oh, okay, this is like insane that they're like asking me to do this. So again, I did it in like an hour, and then a check came in the post for thousands of dollars. And I was like, oh, that's like weird that happened. And then they got back in touch and they were like, oh, they were the team are really happy with what you've done. And Kanye himself loves it. Will you illustrate a year in his life? So I was like, yeah, sure. And they were like, here's the money. And I was like, oh, this is the budget. And I was like, oh, that's more money than I've ever seen in my life. And they were like, that's the first. And I was like, oh, that's brilliant. And they were like, yeah, we'll pay you that, and then we'll give you the other half on delivery. And I was like, oh, that's just... Yeah. So I was like, oh, I feel physically sick doing this. And then I did that. And then I was in bed one day, and I woke up, and I was like, oh, I've got this hilarious email to Charlotte. And she was like, oh, what's funny? I was like, this clown is emailing me, pretending to be Pharrell Williams' agent. And she was like, all right. I was like, yeah, it's obviously someone like having a wind up. They want me to like illustrate, they've seen the Kanye stuff and they want me to illustrate Pharrell. I'll just delete it. So I deleted it. And then like 2 days later, I got an email again saying like, oh, do you want to work for Pharrell? I was like, oh, this joker. And Charlotte was like, well, have you Googled this person? I was like, no, they're just an idiot. And she was like, well, what's their name? So she Googled it. It turned out it was the head creative director of Columbia Records was emailing us. And he was like, yeah, you're a difficult guy. It was a bit like Nick Fury in the Avengers when he talks to like, I can't remember who he talks to, but he's like, you're a difficult guy to get hold of. I think it's in the new Spider-Man film. And he was like, we've been looking for you all over the internet because we thought we found you but it's just some like kid ripping your work off, and we're getting screamed at by it's like I'm so bad with names, but it's like Russell Simmons is like the head of like Def Jam Records, and he was like, he's Rev Run's brother from Run DMC. He was like, he wants like this guy that did these Pharrell drawings, these Kanye drawings to draw Pharrell. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Yeah, that's me. And then I had a conversation with him, and he was like, yeah, how much is it going to cost? So I said, well, for the free drawings, it'll be this much money. He was like, that's fine. And then they sent me a check that was 3 times what I'd asked for, because when Americans talk, if you say like for the free, they think each. And this has happened a few times in our business. So they sent me a load of money, and I was like, oh, this is like so weird. And then I did it, and they were like, do you want to go to the Brit Awards with Pharrell? I was like, no, not really. And they were like, oh, okay. And then I never worked with them again. Because I think back then, like, I was meant to go to the Brit Awards with Pharrell. And so that was a good marketing, like, lesson, I guess. Yeah, so, like, the gist of it was we just did loads of stuff for free and then kind of asked for money, and then people gave us loads of money because we were just really nice. And I think that the story that other people want to post all over the internet is spec work's evil, and if you do it, then someone's going to, like, exploit you. But I was working in a printing company. Like, what else was I doing? Selling paper.
And also, as you said, you didn't spend, like, 5 days on it. It was something you just banged out.
Even if I did spend 5 days on it.
You still think it's a good thing?
It was better than selling paper. Like, and it built us a company.
True.
Like
the way I
PMA,
see it,
I think.
I don't have a problem with spec work at all when it's on your terms. Where I don't like it is if, let's say you've got a regular client and they keep trying to force your hand and say, do that for me for free, do that, and try and squeeze more without paying you. But I think when you're doing it quite often as a strategic move, where it's like, I'm going to do this because, you know what, I enjoy it and I want to do that project, or I'm going to do it to open that door to meet that name or whatever, or get a foot in the door. When you're the one in the driving seat, it's your decision. So I never understand how anyone can criticize that.
Yeah, I also think everything's speculative. I only learned that spec work means speculative like 2 days ago, so now I feel like I'm really clever. I thought it had a different meaning.
Whoa, there, Phil. That's a couple too many syllables for this show.
Yeah, but like
we like to keep things nice and simple.
Everything is speculative. Like, so when someone was like, "Oh, it means speculative work," I was like, "But that's surely every job you ever do. What if your client drops down dead? Then you're not going to get paid. What if you drop down dead? What if you lose the work that you did, and then you have to do, like, if you were working, say, like, you use, like, I don't know, Illustrator, that crashes all the time. So, like, you were doing something and you spent 10 hours and you lost 10 hours of work, and you said to the client, oh, it's going to take me another 10 hours. They're not going to pay you for that extra 10 hours because your computer crashed. So everything's speculative, surely. Like, we've had clients just not pay us at the end of it.
Me too.
And they said they were going to. So, like, surely it's like like, I just think it's not as simple as, I mean, it seems terrible when, like, a huge name does it. Like, you know, and like you get these people like Shaq saying, like, animate me and I'll pay you if I like it. But also, what is it? I don't know what anyone's got to lose apart from time. And like, if you come at it with a positive mental attitude, you might do that. And then Shaq's like, oh, this is the best animator in the world. I'm going to pay. And it might form a great relationship. It could kickstart your career. But I think the internet likes misery, and so Twitter, people like to talk about misery and be like, oh, you know, this is terrible. Don't do this. Don't do this. And it's very easy to be at the end, like midway in your career, and have work coming in and tell amateurs to not do something and be like, well, don't do this. I wouldn't do it. I'm a genius.
Mm-hmm. You know who's allowed to tell you not? Well, they're not really, but someone who's like wildly more successful than you might have a leg to stand on. But when there's someone who's quite a bit less successful, what place do they really have telling you how to do your business?
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And it's the same. Like, haters tend to only hate up. I'm never looking at someone who's like, you know, 10 steps behind me in their journey and they might be starting out. I'm never like giving them hate or being like, how dare you do things that way. People only generally do it when they're looking up and they're a bit jealous or whatever.
Yeah, we got a CV through a few weeks ago from this guy, and he was like looking for a job with us. And we went on his social media and all he did was complain about stuff like, oh, spec work's killing the industry, oh, this is this. And Charlotte was like, oh, he seems like a barrel of laughs. Like, why would we employ him?
Yeah.
Like, why would we want him around
yeah.
us? He just seems awkward and difficult and like a complainer. And I know it's not fashionable to like have that attitude, but there's so much misery in the world. Like, and it's like no one's putting a gun to your head and saying like, oh, you've got to do this animation job for free. If you don't like it, don't do it. Move on. But I think it's like, it's very easy to look at something and say, oh, I'm going to find the negative in it, and rather than the positive.
So what makes you feel positive and happy in your work?
Oh, everything. Yeah, like everything makes me feel positive. At the end of the day, like we all draw things on paper or on digitally and get paid for it. It's a stupid living. Like it's
amazing,
ridiculous.
isn't it?
Yeah, it's amazing. There's literally like, and it doesn't like, you don't have to look too far out your window. Like there's people that are like, there's people that remove cancerous tumours from children's brains. And meanwhile, you'll get people be like, oh, spec work. Not doing that.
Yeah.
Here's an essay on it. And I think it's an uber privileged position. Like,
It is.
you know, or there's like on the other scale, there's like, you know, homeless people. And people are complaining about, oh, I've got to do this drawing. Oh, deadlines, oh, clients. Moan.
Yeah. You got work.
Totally agree. I think optimism, right, solves a hell of a lot.
I think the thing is, I think especially in the early days, you want to do as much work. Say, you know, you want to do similar to what you were doing. You would do these projects because one, you get the piece of work that you did anyway, even if you get paid for it or not, that you can put on your portfolio and say about it. You get the experience, and you might get the relationship as well from doing that work. And like for me, I'm actually paying to do mural work because I said, like, I approached the council and said, I want to do a mural here. I'll pay for everything. My time.
Speaking of which, mate, we genuinely do need a mural in the new office. So if you're willing to pay us, pop on in.
Nice.
We call it spec work.
Tom.
If you do it, I might consider still being friends with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting thing in like the positive attitude, because like I know from listening to the podcast, Ian's a fellow, like, you know, is also Christian, is that surely like my beliefs are spec work. Like I'm a nice, honest, good person in the hope that one day I'll find, you know, warmth in the arms of God. That's speculative.
Yeah.
But I still put in the time to be like a nice person and like do good.
Because it's something you choose to do and something you want to do, and it's something that fills you, makes you feel good. Yeah, absolutely.
And like we're all obliged to like be nice people, and like to think that that's all going to come back around to us one day is speculative.
And if it doesn't, then that's the equivalent theologically of not being paid by the client.
Exactly.
Which would suck.
Yeah.
It sure would.
How bad would the world be if you got paid for being nice though? Because you don't know when people would be genuine, would you? So it'll be a weird.
Well, Ian, as Dustin isn't here and he's normally the philosophical one, I think it's the philosopher Hume that argues that any actions actually are derived by your own pleasure and your own hedonism, no matter how nice it's. Like even if we're giving to charity, it's because it makes us feel good.
Yep.
True.
Anyway, that was a tangent. So
I want to ask you. You don't look that old, unless you really. I don't know.
I am old.
No, you don't. You really don't. So I want to know how.
Remember, he's living clean.
He is
cleaner than any of us. So it's probably knocked 20 years off him.
I mean, did you grow up with Archie Comics? I didn't understand how come you have such a. Because you look too young for that.
I'm heavily in my 30s.
That is young for me at least.
I think like they've never left, have they? Archie, they're like Mickey Mouse. They're always here.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe just in South Africa, it kind of like did a serious nosedive. But I mean, for me, that was like when I first saw your work, I was like, oh my word, because the first thing I remember trying to copy was Veronica. and that was like a major influence in me trying to understand anatomy. So I was just interested to know, how come you have such a strong attraction for that particular thing?
Yeah, I'm super like into everything 60s.
Yeah.
I was I'm fascinated with like my grandparents. Like that's a weird like another story, but like I'm fascinated with like my grandparents and like that generation, and Walt Disney and Mary Blair and 60s, everything 60s.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm probably like born in the wrong decade.
I also feel the same way.
But yeah, I'm just obsessed with like how nothing has progressed since then, particularly.
Yes.
Apart from like mobile phones. Like we were talking the other day, like there's weird stuff, right? So like Martin Luther King and Anne Frank were born in the same year. Like that's just mind blowing. Like it's impossible to think about. Or like the Queen and Marilyn Monroe were born in the same year. It's crazy. But Walt Disney saw like the like rise of automobiles, aeroplanes, and the first man on the moon in his lifetime. And he was born in 1901 and died in 1966. So that's not a lot of time. That's 65 years. So that avid of innovation, I just think it's amazing. But I would say to any like young listeners, don't try and draw anatomy from Veronica, because she doesn't have anywhere to keep her organs.
That's true.
She's so like
true.
thinnest waist.
But she
in the
was
world.
the sexiest thing on paper, in my opinion. Yeah. Yeah, it's good stuff. I love it.
Is that where you got your haircut from?
No, but yeah. Now that I think of it,
she's rocking it though, right?
Yeah, same, exactly the same.
She has a different haircut every week.
that's true.
I know.
I do change.
Yeah, we've got a theory. It's just interchangeable at this point. Interchangeable style.
Yeah.
Phil, so what's next? I'm excited to see where you guys take things.
Oh, a lot of it at the moment is like under NDA, because now we're starting to work with like bands that we admire, which is crazy. So lots more trips to LA, I think, in the pipeline. And
Have I told you how fantastically good looking and what great company you are recently?
Thank you.
Just saying, we should hang out more, Phil. Definitely.
Yeah, we're only down the road, but I think like I don't want to say more of the same, but we have ideas and there's talks of doing things a lot bigger. So there's some people interested in taking the ABC book to bigger places.
Nice.
And one way is like further niche, and one way is further to the mainstream. And so we're trying to work out which one's more exciting.
And what does your heart say? What does your gut say?
If it goes niche, it would be working alongside my childhood hero, which is bizarre. It's also like this whole journey has taken us to that weird thing. Our childhood heroes are now our friends, which is just bizarre.
Yeah.
It makes me feel physically sick to like comprehend that like a year ago we were like, wouldn't it be great to have 1,000 followers? And then like a few weeks ago we were guests at Reading Festival. It's
amazing.
It's a world we shouldn't live in.
How long were you going before this crazy year happened? Because often that's what we touch on in the show. Like that's all so exciting, but I don't want anyone to think that you start design and then blow up like this, and that's what they should anticipate.
Yeah, 10 years.
Okay.
And that's coming out of uni.
Okay.
Yeah,
cool.
like
and
we came out of uni 10 years ago.
10 years of grafting, I'd imagine.
Yeah, 10 years of doing like utter rubbish. And also that's still like, it's not rubbish, but stuff like that, like you'd never get away from the small stuff, or like
you can't.
Like you still have to artwork stuff, you still have to answer emails, you still have to negotiate. That it never goes away. It's just now a little bit more fun because you occasionally get to go and have dinner with, you know, a band that you love, or go to a festival, or you know, you get, I don't know, like even getting DMs from like a band. Like we literally get DM'd by the girls that I grew up with posters on my wall of.
That's
which
insane.
insane, yeah. And like sending, like last week this weekend just gone, we had a really lovely Twitter exchange with the editor of Archie Comics. It was like, and then buying our stuff. Like, it's
Crazy.
bizarre. It's like a whole nother world of another stratosphere or layer to what we're doing. But yeah, 10 years to get to just that, and it's still not,
Yeah. Oh, you're just getting started.
Yeah,
I can see it.
Yeah.
So I guess if you had to condense that down into a soundbite, would it simply be like the hard work and foundation followed by fully leaning into your true self artistically and with your business focus?
Yeah, I think it's like it's summed up in like the values of what we grew up with in the hardcore punk scene is just show up, smile, and just be nice and be positive. And if you can do that, and you will find people that are the same as you. But if you try and leech on to something that isn't you, or like anything, like if you like try and like, if you're inauthentic or you sell out or you're not true to yourself, people aren't going to want to see what you're doing because you haven't got you're not speaking any truth. But at the same time, you can be the most authentic person in the world, but if you come across like a complete dick, no one's going to want to know you either. So it's just be positive, be nice, and put in the work and be hardworking. And I think I had this conversation with Charlotte this week about like, you quite often get these designers that are like, I'm the designer, what I say goes. If I want to give them an orange logo, they should have an orange logo. They're hiring me for my expertise. And that's the typical meme designer. But imagine if you went to a restaurant and were like, can I get this pizza with no anchovies? And the chef ran out and was like, look, moron. that makes that pizza taste better. How dare you question me? I'm an expert. You've come to my restaurant because I'm an expert. And weirdly, in Japan, that is the case.
Oh, really?
And they treat everyone's profession like, you don't ask for changes because the chef's done it. And their attitude is, if you don't like it, eat at home.
Wow.
But in our society, just it's madness to think like, if you're it's like Ian's analogy of a builder. If you had a decorator come around and was like, I'm painting this room grey, and you're like, well, I asked for it blue, and he's like, well, look, the way I see it is I'm an expert, and I think it will look better when the light comes in through the window, and you're like, yeah, but I didn't want it that way. But I think like designers who have got one client, I don't know where it's come from, but it's like that's the cool way to be, and to be like this, like big, like, and it comes across to me like they always seem like they've got a ponytail when they're in the 80s with a flip phone and a pager, and like that's how they talk to people.
That is an
but
image
like,
of note. Oh.
Yeah, but like it's that kind of like Mad Men, like if clients don't like me, this is the way I am. Grumble. But sure, clients won't like you, and you won't get any repeat work. So just show up, be nice, be respectful, be kind. Always say thank you. Well, like we always say to clients, like, thank you for having me. Like, thank you for having us. Thank you for letting us do this stupid profession. Because, because that's just the way that we were raised. And, like, it's the same with, like, I hate using the phrase, but the fans of our work, we talk to them with respect. Because the bands that we grew up loving talk to us with respect. And we answer every DM someone sends and put in the time and the effort to be nice people. Yeah. And if you are nice, then things will come round.
Yeah.
I love that.
Absolutely.
As you were saying that, I was literally visualizing the DMs we're going to get on the back of it, being like, loved that episode, especially the monologue about that.
No, it'll be all designers saying, how dare this person say spec work's fine and it's okay to work for free. Because I think
you underestimate our listeners.
Yeah.
I don't know what other shows you've been on, but they're a pretty astute bunch.
Yeah, it's difficult because you are like, with punk, you're pushing against the norm all the time. But it's okay, and it's okay not to just be like, oh, this design, and like, I don't know the guy at all. I know like Tom's a big fan of his, but like Chris Doe, just because Chris Doe says it doesn't mean it's true. Like that isn't fact, and I'm just using him as an example. But all those influence, all these people. If Ian says, "Oh, the best brush for Procreate lettering is this," that doesn't mean it's true. It just means it's the best for him and his opinion. And we fall into this social media world of like, oh, an influencer said it, so it must be. This must be it. This is the right thing for me. And if I don't do this, then I'm going to be a massive failure because I'm living by this person's standards. But it's all just not true. Like, it's okay to question things. So if you think that doing spec work is all right, or you think doing something for free is okay, and your gut tells you that's fine, and you're not selling out your morals, you're not hurting anyone, I can't see the problem.
Just do your own thing.
Yeah, and so what? And then people say like, oh, it damages the industry. So what? Who cares about the design industry?
I think people overestimate their impact. Like, it would be a pretty fragile industry if like one designer over here doing things a bit subversively managed to decimate the whole industry. I don't think that's probably going to happen.
But even if it did, and it was like, oh, everyone's now only going to, like, every client is going to want you to do this, then everyone will just adapt, surely. And then everyone adapts and the cream rises again. And, you know, that happens. But what I do know is if everything does change and everyone's looking to adapt, the clients will choose to work with the person that was nice. Yeah. Over the talent or the ego or whatever. So as long as you're nice and you're positive, and like, I think positivity is the key to our message. Just be positive.
There's so many common threads throughout the show, and you're echoing a lot of, speaking of influencers, I'm sure he would cringe at the very thought of it being associated with his name. But when we had Aaron Draplin on, a lot of what he was saying, I think people might perceive him as, he's someone who's so successful, should we almost be wary of him? Actually, he just preached good old fundamentals of be humble, respect your client, be grateful you get to do the work you get to do, and just be a decent human being. And it's like, 1,000%.
Yeah, it's the same background. Draplin comes from like hardcore, like he likes Fugazi and all these bands. Yeah, and it's just the same mentality.
They popped up on my playlist the other day, and it's like so out the envelope of their main songs, but I think it's them where it's like, I'm so tired. That song better? Anyway.
Their big hit is Waiting Room.
Yeah. Random one though. It's like really not a punk record at all. Ian, sorry, what were you going to say, mate?
I was just saying about the niching thing, that what I found and what it seems that Phil has found is that, you know, niching, you find like, because the clients are passionate about what you're passionate about, there's like a common interest, so the relationship seems better off from the offset. Rather than it being, you know, someone coming from pharmaceuticals and you have no clue about pharmaceuticals, all you know about is design, and it's just no one's really passionate about anything. And so when you've got a common interest anyway, and that's why we talk about, like, you know, if you're like something outside of work, you're a passionate gardener, then be the graphic designer for gardening people, or, you know, be with the people that you're passionate with, because they're always going to need some sort of design or illustration or lettering, whatever it is, and be that person within the niche. It doesn't have to be niched into the area that you're passionate about. It can be niched into the environment of the thing you're passionate about. So
how many kids books are there for punk rockers? I can't think of a lot.
A good lesson, I say this to every young person that ever talks to me about becoming a designer, running your own business, is go and do a sales job for a year in an industry you know nothing about. Like I did mine in print. I thought I knew about print because I'd used like a printer, but then I had to learn about Fomex and Fomex thickness and dye bond and paper GSM and all this rubbish, and like what can be used outdoors and indoors, and then go to a client I also had no interest in and talk to them about paper. And it's the most boring thing ever, but and it's really hard. It's really, really, really hard to talk about paper to like a Premiership football team. It's because I know nothing about football. So it's one of the most awkward things, because you can't even have like the banter. You just have to be like, yeah, paper, this is good. This dye bond, this is what you should use. But then if you flash forward to like having coffee with like we had coffee with Rusty Pistachios, who's the lead guitarist of H2O. And I can talk to Rusty all day about anything, because we've got so much similar interest. We like coffee, we're vegan, and we like hardcore. And Rusty's 30 years older than me, but we can talk just about super easily and talk to him. Like, we stayed at the weirdest thing that's happened to us. We stayed at Jen Finch, who's the bass player from L7. We stayed at her house when we were in LA, which is super bizarre that should be happening, because she was my childhood crush, and she was friends with Kurt Cobain. It's mental. But I can talk to Jen about all kinds of stuff because I know her music and her history because I grew up with it, but we like similar bands, and we can just talk, and then work might come out of that. But to try and talk in an industry you literally know nothing about and be like, and it's really hard.
You're not going for Jaeger bombs with John Terry.
No, definitely not. But it's also like, that's another like good tip, is most work, the best meetings are the ones where you know you've got the job, are the ones where you haven't talked about work the entire meeting. Whereas when we used to go and pitch and be like, hi, we could do this website for you, look at this, and like, and just talk about work and figures and stuff, we'd get like the phone call on the train home saying, you didn't get the pit, you didn't get it. But when we go and just have like dinner with like, a rock star, and we won't talk about work once, and at the end they're like, right, okay, this is what we want to do.
Yeah.
And it becomes so easy, and you're confident because you just be like,
no one likes to be salty. Not really.
No.
I love it. And my eye keeps drifting back in the background for anyone watching the video is the ABC book for punk rock. And I keep using this example every time someone talks to me, and they're like, I'm pretty scared to niche because right now I'm doing generic graphic design, and I think if I niche into logo design, it's going to be too focused and I won't get any work. And I'm like, these people literally made a book, the ABC book of punk rock. I think you'll be okay in your quaint little niche of logo design.
And there's only one band anyone's heard in it.
Exactly.
Like, the Clash are the most mainstream.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm like, I think they're doing just fine.
Yeah. Well, I think what it is with mediocre generic work, you get dribbles of it and you can get it quite quickly when you first start out. And that's the problem. But if you want the bigger work and you want to work with stuff you're passionate about or work with big brands, you have to niche down and be niching down without any return for quite a while. And then you suddenly start to get the work in. Or, that's been my experience, is that I niched down for like a good couple of years with not getting any proper lettering work. And then all of a sudden I got a Speedo come along and asked me to do stuff for them. And then I got to do work for Adobe. Then I got to work for Apple. And then because
that Speedo was just a bit of modelling work, though, wasn't it, mate?
Yeah.
Okay. We're talking about design here.
Yeah. So I was niching down into modelling. I'm a letterer and a modeller.
Niching down into your trunks.
So that's really weird that you would say like niching is from designer to logo designer. Because surely I'd just be like, that's not really a jump. That's like putting your toe in to be like...
No, you'd be amazed, mate, honestly. People are so resistant to it. They're like, even that's limiting in their eyes. They're like, I need to do any sort of design for any type of client. Like,
yeah, but that's like... it's not like even jack of all trades. It's like if you don't stand for something, you fall for everything.
Yep.
Like, it's ridiculous. Like, and we didn't even do that when we were not doing the punk stuff. We were still we do websites for WordPress websites and for small businesses. And then we were already niched. We were just like, this is a niche that we don't enjoy. Like, anyone who's sitting there going, I can't, you say this a lot about people giving pushback about niching, but I just don't really know. And also, like, surely, I know, like, the internet's free, more or less. Like, could you not just make 2 websites and 2 Instagram profiles and A/B them and just see and have a pseudonym? And
I think what everybody forgets about niching is that you can, obviously not overnight, but when you start gaining traction in that particular niche, you can definitely command higher prices, and that is way more beneficial and attractive than just plodding along in this like sea of mediocrity, I think that should be also a good driving factor. Like, do what you love more, do, do good projects and get paid well. I mean, you told us all those stories full about all, you just got these enormous checks coming away, and all you did was have fun on paper for a couple of hours, So, yeah.
I love it. Guys, I think that might be about time, unfortunately, but I could honestly keep this conversation going. And Phil, we definitely need to book in your office visit. I know it was me being a little bit flaky last time, but now we're in the new digs officially. We need to have you down. But honestly, for me, that was really value packed. I think people listening should maybe even go back and listen again, because there were a lot of golden nuggets throughout. We talked about how to sell physical products successfully, how to niche down, how to really lean into your own style and be more authentic to yourself instead of being totally generic. Got pretty strategic. Obviously, try and work with Kanye. That seems to open a lot of doors. Don't sell on Etsy. That would be another big tip.
The biggest.
Etsy's evil.
Unless your audience is stay-at-home mums.
Yeah, exactly. Phil, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you enjoyed it. Where can the lovely listeners find you and check out your stuff?
Yeah, Instagram's the best place. We're just at HECreative. So it's like HECreative. And then there's a link tree. And that just takes you everywhere else.
Amazing. So everyone be sure to go and check out their Instagram.
Get a book, buy the old ABC.
Buy 2 books.
Exactly.
Christmas coming up.
While you're on there, some prints from Ian, because he's losing the will to live at this point.
I'm going to DM Ian. I've got loads of ideas about how you can get rid of your prints.
Brilliant.
Nice. Let's make this happen.
Box of matches.
Phil, Phil, if you do that, it's definitely something we'd like to cover on the show, because
definitely
that would make me happy. But seriously, everyone go follow HECreative on Instagram. As we touched on, I really think you're just getting started. What you've achieved in the last year is crazy. So I think everyone should keep an eye on you for the next 10 years, because things are going to get very interesting indeed.
Yep.
Cool. Thanks again, Phil.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bye from us. Thanks so much for listening to this week's episode. As always, you can find full show notes over at honestdesigners.com, or find us over on iTunes and now Spotify by searching for The Honest Designers Show. And remember, we're now on social media too, if you search for Honest Designers. If today's episode helped you, then it would mean the world to us if you took just a moment to leave us a quick review over on iTunes, as this is one of the best ways for other designers to discover the show. Thanks again for tuning in, and we will see you next week right here on The Honest Designers Show.